Yes, everybody, it's Ange-Ball in FM24. It has been an absolute delight putting this one together. Maddison as a roaming playmaker, the two inverted wing-backs coming in. Really good rest defence off the ball. We've got the wide players staying really wide, but then cutting in as they do. Son leading in line. And the little bonus has been that man there, Højbjerg, as the box-to-box midfielder. We're going to look at that a little bit more in detail because he's an absolute threat. Getting on these underlapping runs that we've got in the player and team instructions. Absolute beast at getting into the area. Right, we're going to dive into it. We're going to go through the team instructions, player instructions. We're going to show some clips as we go. This tactic is available for my Patreons. Link down in the description if you want to support the channel for £3 a month. Get all the previous tactic uploads. Remember, guys, this is a tactical replication. I am not trying to meta the game or beat the game. This is just trying to get real life into FM and kind of mix the two together. If you don't want to be a Patreon, do not worry. I'm going to go through everything for you so you can copy the tactic and have a little bit of Ange-Ball in your save yourself. All right, guys, smash a like on today's video. Let's get into it. Right, so here is the 4-3-3. Now, unfortunately, Porro's just got injured, but we're just going to keep him in because obviously he is being the starter so far for me and for Ange. A 4-3-3, which kind of then goes into a 2-3-5 in possession, something that is very popular at the moment, and with the use of the inverted wing backs, it's kind of really easy to get it in. So what we're looking at is building up patiently from the back, often the two centre halves with the two wing backs coming in narrow, and then the two midfielders acting at times as an 8 to get that 5 across. So we'll have Richarlison, Kulusevski wide, Son in the middle, and then Maddison and Højbjerg either side, working really well in the match engine. So Vicario in goal, sweeper keeper on defend, nice and simple. He's not got an amazing range of passing. He is constantly asked to sort of like find fullbacks, find Basuma, find the centre-backs in particular. So we've just got it on defend. Play out from the back, but not to overdo it in terms of a sweeper keeper on attack. Moving on to the fullbacks, we've got one as an inverted wing-back on attack. I do find Porro just slightly more aggressive. I don't know if that's a tactical thing or just a bit of a personal thing maybe. I think because we generally have Kulusevski, who's a little bit of a support option, who likes to drift into these areas, it maybe encourages Porro to go on beyond a little bit further. You know, we found him in these areas. He got that cut back against Liverpool in the last minute. I know it was maybe the last minute, and they were chasing the result against Liverpool, chasing for the 3 points. But he did get into these areas, and I find he gets into those areas more with Udogie. And with Richarlison being a little bit more aggressive in these areas, I thought it was a really good balance to have one on attack and one on support. With the wing-backs in particular as well, we're seeing superb rest defence. We're seeing really good clear 2-3-5 in build-up as well. But with Porro as well, we also get that little bit of an overlap at times. Even though we've got underlap on and we've got a winger in front and he's an inverted wing-back, he still does get round the side and put some balls in the box. Okay, so here's a little clip. Now, what it gives is just shows you sort of like the highlight of having inverted wing backs, just in case there's a loss of possession. So you imagine if we had that ball and them two were playing as wide full backs, we wouldn't have these two now to help and to squeeze in the play. So we get the play back, we overrun it, it cuts out a pass, and then what we try and do is then build. So then we've got our two here, two defenders, and then we've got our line of 5 with our 2 attacking 8, striker, 2 wide players keeping width, and then Porro and Udogie really acting as inverted wing-back. Now, what I'm going to try and do during FM at some point is try and get creative midfielders, so like a James Ward-Prowse perhaps, to start as an inverted wing-back. But then in possession, he would be right in here because he's got the technique, he's got the vision. Maybe to play passes maybe better than a Pedro Porro or just a generic full-back. So the rest defence is good. You know, any loose balls in here, we've got 3 players. Now, obviously, we've got these spaces to go into. That is a weakness, so just remember your defenders probably need to have good physicals in terms of pace. I would say acceleration. You know, Mickey van der Ven and Romero are superb at covering the wide areas, really aggressive in the wide areas as well. And then this one, just quickly, is just an example of, if we just highlight Porro, obviously we've been without the ball, so we're in nice and narrow, nice and compact, and then we win it and we spring. But this is just an example of the wing-back going out wide and getting a crossing. So the ball that he actually plays, he ends up in quite similar to what he played against Liverpool in the last minute when Matip dropped it in. So he's in quite a narrow position. But it just opens up for him to then go around the outside. Like, he's got an option if it's Kulusevski, he's got an option in the inside, but obviously he's on attack. He wants to drive forward as much as possible, and he just fires the ball across. Yes, we maybe get a little bit lucky, but just showing you that the inverted wingback in particular on attack will hit the byline and still cause problems. So that was just a little clip just to show you what Porro can do on the inverted wingback on attack. You know, we want him in them wide areas at times. He does get into those wide areas looking for cutbacks potentially to a Maddison, to a Son, a back stick to a Richarlison. There you go. Inverted wingback on attack. A superb role so far in FM24. Okay, the two centre-halves have gone pretty basic. So Romero, tackle harder, of course, with a central defender on defend, and Mickey van der Ven, ball-playing defender on defend with tackle harder. Now, if you look at his FP ref stats, he is really high in terms of progressive carries, but that is over the last year, and I do think at the moment he's been asked, he does carry with it, but he is asked to play balls into midfield and let the midfielders dictate the play. I think at Wolfsburg last year, he was part of a back three, I think, and he was the left-sided centre-half, so often would have a little bit maybe space to go on an overlap or underlap. So that's maybe why the results are skewed. So I didn't put dribble more on. However, if you want to just tweak things slightly, having dribble more on is one of my favourite PIs in the game when having a centre-back as a ball-playing defender. Right, Bissouma, we've gone defensive midfielder on support with just the instruction of dribble more. Once again, if you look at his FP ref stats, progressive carries, really high. And it just gives him another little option. He's obviously really good at carrying the ball. He's got 16 dribbling as well. And here he is, Bissouma. We win possession. Good counter press, by the way. And just with the dribble more instruction, I don't think he would do it if we didn't have this PI on. So obviously he's good at carrying. There he is. He's going to break the lines a little bit. And he comes into the midfield area. There's now a slide pass. Richarlison from his run from out to in comes in. Really good finish from Richarlison. But just a little clip there just to show you what else it can offer. Sometimes like a defensive midfielder on support, they just get it and give it. And it just gives us that extra option. Obviously, not all players can do that. Bissouma, as I said, has got, 16 dribbling. So he's very, very effective at it. Right, moving into the midfield, we've got Højbjerg, box-to-box midfielder with the instruction of stay wider. Now, often in possession, I think on last year's game, I actually had it as a Carrilero with Sarr. But we're just finding now, because we've got underlaps on, we want really someone to drive into this area. And I do love Højbjerg. And I've just put him in instead of Sarr because he's better than Sarr in the game. So that's why I've done it. And he's really, really effective. So far this season, 3 goals and 4 assists. And a lot of his goals are getting into these areas in here. Now, I did have it as a Carrilero last year. But I just find with the Kulusevski keeping the width, Porro coming in here, I necessarily don't want Højbjerg to come out here because we want to isolate Kulusevski as the winger. We want to isolate that 1v1. And then what that does do, because of the player instruction that's in it, roam from position, he does naturally just like to burst forward and go on really good underlapping runs. All right, so here is Højbjerg. I would say a little bit wide for a box-to-box midfielder. I don't know. I can't decide if without that instruction, he would be a little bit narrower, a little bit close to Son. But what he does do is combines really well with Kulusevski at times. So he's in here, he lays it off, but he carries on his run. And now we've got an underlap opportunity. He's on the underlap and he's in, and he finishes really well. And he constantly gets into these areas, either for him to shoot or, as I said with assist, cutting balls across. There's one for Son that I'll show you in a minute. But I just want to show you this one as well. He does open the scoring for us. And it's just a really well-worked team goal that he, once again, drives. So you can see now we're on possession. And even though the ball's coming this way, if you just watch his movement, he starts going away from the ball. Just a couple of steps. He's got an absolute acres of space now. Udogie is going to probably drive inside, comes inside with it, and then he moves inside. Once again, we've got that 2-3-5 forming with the 3. That 3 is absolutely key. You know, any losses of possession, why Man United are so bad when they lose the ball at the moment, because they don't have that in at the moment. You know, you talk about the games against Wolves. This is what Ange's trying to protect. Obviously, ploughing many players forward. You've got to make sure your rest defence is good. You know, they're exposing areas in these wide areas. I think that's why Van der Ven was signed as well, just to give them that real pace and energy to cut out any balls that are played in channels. And we'll just keep him highlighted. So there he is in a really good attacking space, nice and wide as well. And what it's doing is making an option for Henry. Does he follow Kulusevski? Does he come in at Højbjerg? He's kind of caught between the two. Well, what that allows is Højbjerg to have a little bit of room to work in. He's now coming, someone's marked him. And he's just finding little pockets. And he eventually gets on it. He plays the lovely ball into Son, but he follows his run. Look at his run. He's in. We're working the ball into the box. That's one of the team instructions. And there is Højbjerg to fire home. All right, so just a couple of clips. There's a couple of more that I could have showed you, but to keep the video a little bit short, I've just left it at that, but a really superb role to have in that combination with the winger on support and that PI, remember, of stay wider. And then James Maddison, roaming playmaker. Now, I've dabbled with central midfield on attack at times, in particular last year when I was making the video, but at the moment, he just describes the roaming playmaker absolutely perfectly. The roaming playmaker is the heartbeat of this team, driving forward with the ball to spearhead attacks as well as tracking back to cover defensively. He will look to pick up the ball in deep positions and work the ball towards with urgency. You know, Maddison loves to drop deep. I think it's one of his player traits. Shoots from distance, comes deep to get at the ball, and he's just the heartbeat of the side. Now, my main worry was that with the roaming playmaker, because if you go into the playmaker, into the PIs, you can't get further forward on, and that was going to be one of my things that I wanted, because at times, in particular when the goals against Fulham, when they won it high, he's really high, and I was wanting him to get up here and combine with Son a little bit. But what I think, I don't know if it's an FM thing, I think it is an FM thing, a new thing that they spoke about with the new features and how positions are changing in FM, is because Udogie comes into this area a lot. In the past, maybe with FM, Maddison would have stayed in his position and would have had a clutter of players in here and an overcrowding of unnecessary players in here. But I just think the run of Udogie coming inside just triggers Maddison to move forward, and I've got a really good clip just to highlight that. Okay, so we're just going to watch this clip. As you can see, there we go. He's in his midfield three. He's got Højbjerg there, and obviously to the side of him, Bissouma just behind. We've got a standard back four in. But we're just going to highlight Maddison and just watch what happens when we get control of the ball. So Porro's nicked in. And then immediately Udogie is coming into this midfield area. Helps with our rest defence. But as you can see now, because of the Udogie trigger, it then triggers Maddison then to push up higher. And it gets him into really good attacking positions. Look, he's asking for it. Look at the acre of space he's got now. He's really giving the defenders or even a midfielder, you know, if a midfielder drops into mark him, that's going to give Bissouma and the inverted wing-back. It's going to give them some overloads in there. So that's what I really like about it, that the movement of Udogie, you'd maybe find if he was a roaming playmaker, maybe 10, 15 yards deeper, maybe if this was last year's game. But because of Udogie coming in, it has triggered Maddison to just be that little bit further forward, and that's exactly what we wanted. And then once again, I'll just show you a bit of clip. It's just him, what he's good at. You know, you can imagine Maddison in these spaces, then driving forward, shifting the ball out wide, constantly the heartbeat, getting on the ball. And he's always in and around these areas here, around the edge of the area. And because he's got, obviously wants to shoot, shoots from distance, not great goalkeeping, but what you're going to get from a player like James Maddison, roaming playmaker, wanting to shoot from distance, dictate the play. Like, honestly, I don't know if it's an FM24 thing. I don't know if it's just in my head, but it's so far, it's looking absolutely superb of how it's then replicating in the match engine from what you would hope to see from James Maddison as the roaming playmaker. Moving into the wide areas, we've got Kulusevski on support with cut inside, like massive change, helps Ange-Ball so much because he likes his wingers to be inverted in terms of cutting in, but he wants them to keep their width. And on last year's game with the inverted wingers, they would start narrow in those sort of half spaces. And you could only really get the players to cut inside if they had it really as a player trait. So having cut inside with the ball has been absolutely key. So they're there to hold their width. We've got that little bit of balance with Richarlison on attack. He's going to look to get inside sort of like the byline and cut balls back, whereas Kulusevski is probably going to drift into these areas. We've seen that with those underlapping passes. You often see him picking the ball up wide and then just driving pretty much horizontally into the pitch. And obviously, the only player instruction on both, cut inside with the ball. And then Son up front, pressing forward on attack, does it really well, leads the line, links play, really good at those movements. We saw from one of those Højbjerg attempts coming in short, then going in behind. Really good movement, obviously, with Sonny. What is his off the ball? Yeah, he's got off the ball 17, work rate 17. A really good option to have up there in particular as well. You can play Richarlison up there. We've got Brennan Johnson that can play with us there as well. So pressing forward has so far helped us just link it all together really nicely. But we really want him to pin the two centre-halves back. If he pins the two centre-halves back, it then just gives these two those spaces in there. I think if it was a deep line forward, they'd naturally drop in. It just allows him staying high, just allows Maddison and Højbjerg to roam and get on the ball either in the half spaces or them little free areas, sort of like 30 yards out, just ahead of the midfield, in between the midfield and the defenders. All right, that is the player that is the players and the PIs. We're now going to move into the team instructions. So positive mentality, shorter passing. There's not an over-reliance on shorter passing, but I've just put it in just to help with those possession numbers. At times, we just go a little bit long too quickly. Yes, we might want to go long on a counter-attack, either a ball out wide or hitting Son early, which we get with the game anyway. But I want them possession numbers just to be a little bit better than what they were showing me at the early parts of the season. Higher tempo, moving that ball quickly. I haven't changed the attacking width. I do tweak it in games depending on who we're playing. Obviously, if we're playing against a low block, I will then really ramp it right up. So then we're stretching with that 2-3-5 formation and really stretching that 5 a lot wider across the pitch. We want the underlapping runs either from a Højbjerg or a Madison at times, or those inverted wing backs in particular. And wingers are gonna hold onto the ball and wait for those runs to be made. Play out from defence. The amount of times the ball goes into Van der Ven, it goes into Romero, and then they're looking for the two wide players. They're looking for a Madison. They're looking just for the simple kind of possession rotation, and then rotation of kind of positions and passes with Basuma in that middle to make a little bit of a triangle. So we've got that on. And then working to the box on. We're not amazing in the air. Sonny's not great. Richarlison, he's probably okay, but Spurs are not massive for crosses into the box at the moment anyway. So, and it does help with just recycle possession in and around that 18-yard box. I think it does also potentially help with underlapping runs rather than a shot from distance or a cross coming in from wide areas. They're looking at those runs from those inverted wing backs and the 2-8s. And then be more expressive. We've seen at times, wing backs going onto the opposite side of the pitch. We've seen Højbjerg, he did it a lot against Fulham on Monday night, dropping into full-back areas and stuff. So I've just done it just to allow them to be more creative and move around. Obviously, when ball possession is lost, that will then change. We've got the counter press on in transition, as you can see. So when the ball's lost, we'll counter press, hopefully get the ball back quickly. We've got that really good, remember, rest defence with those three, the two inverted wing backs and the holding midfielder as well. So that works really well. And then counter, because we've got Sonny, we've got Richarlison, we've got Kulusevski going wide. We've got those options to hit teams on the break. Distribute to centre-backs for the keeper. He generally, 8 or 9 passes out of 10 generally go to the centre-half, so that's why I've got that on. Out of possession, we've been really aggressive. I think James Maddison came up with a quote of Ange not being happy in the pre-season friendly, that they were pressed and then went 2-0 up against Shakhtar and then dropped off. So I've ramped it right up, high line, high press. We're constantly on it regardless of who we're playing and what the score is. I think Spurs are going to be outdone at some points during the season when they're not quite at it. And it'd be interesting to see how they develop once they're back in Europe, because no doubt they're going to be back in Europe next year. But for now, when we're playing one game a week, high press, much higher line, trigger press much more often, so we're constantly at it and aggressively. All right, guys, so that is it. Hope you've enjoyed it. Go plug it in, follow the instructions, download it if you want to become a Patreon as well. The download is now available for the Patreons. Thanks for watching, guys. Any comments, what tactic you'd like to see next, let me know down in the comments. Cheers, guys. Take care.